Hi there, my name is Amy, and I'm a 37-year-old woman. The past few months have felt like being caught in a storm I never saw coming, a storm that tore through everything I thought was stable and left me standing in the wreckage, trying to piece my life back together. It's been a time of relearning, of rediscovering who I am beyond the roles I used to play, wife, sister, daughter, and of learning to adapt to a reality I never imagined facing. This chapter of my life began with a series of blows, each one heavier than the last, brought on by my husband, Daniel. Yet, amid that chaos, a few kind souls, especially my mother, became my anchors. Their support became my lifeline, keeping me afloat when I felt I might drown in the heartbreak and betrayal that followed. But before diving deeper into those events, let me introduce you to the key people in my story, those who shaped my world, for better or worse. First, there's my sister, Hannah, 5 years younger, effortlessly beautiful, and the kind of person who drew attention without trying. Growing up, we couldn't have been more different. I was the studious, quiet type, the one buried in books, while Hannah was wild, spontaneous, and always at the center of every crowd. Our differences often clashed. She teased me for being boring, and I secretly envied how easily people seemed to love her. Mom always tried to smooth things over, insisting that we'd grow closer one day, and to some degree, she was right. As we grew older and I left for college, the distance softened our edges. We learned to coexist, maybe not as close sisters, but as two people who respected each other enough to keep the peace. Then there's Daniel, my ex-husband. We met at work, and what started as small talk over coffee breaks soon turned into late-night conversations and shared dreams. He was charming in that quiet, confident way that made people feel safe around him. After 2 years of dating, he proposed, and I said yes, believing I was stepping into a life built on love and trust. In the early years, everything felt perfect. We worked hard, saved up, and finally bought our first home, a modest but beautiful place that became my pride. The mortgage was in my name since I earned a bit more at the time, but to me, it symbolized partnership, teamwork, and a shared future. After settling down, Daniel began talking about starting a family. He painted a picture so perfect: weekends at the park, bedtime stories, family dinners, that I eventually agreed, even though I worried about balancing motherhood and career. When our son was born, I felt a joy I can't describe, and 2 years later, when our daughter arrived, I thought our family was complete. At first, Daniel was a devoted husband and father. He helped with diaper changes, midnight feedings, and Sunday breakfasts, but slowly, things began to change. His patience wore thin, his presence at home dwindled, and the man who once looked at me with warmth now seemed distant and distracted. When Daniel got a promotion that nearly doubled his income, he suggested I quit my job to focus on the kids and the household. I hesitated. It felt like giving up a part of myself, but after endless arguments and his insistence that we didn't need 2 incomes, I gave in. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go back to work once the kids were older. With more time at home, I found new ways to stay busy. I began hosting dinner parties, something I genuinely enjoyed. My mother and sister would often visit, and Daniel's mother, Alexis, would drop by whenever she was in town. Those evenings filled the silence that had crept into my marriage. For a while, it felt like I had found a rhythm again, one that made me forget the growing cracks beneath the surface. But everything changed after the traumatic birth of our daughter. Complications nearly cost me my life. I spent weeks recovering, physically and emotionally, while Daniel grew more distant than ever. I told myself he was just scared, traumatized, even, but deep down, I knew something had shifted between us. Then came the moment that shattered everything. One quiet afternoon, while cleaning our bedroom, I found a pair of women's panties that weren't mine. My hands trembled as I held them, my mind spinning with disbelief. A cold wave of nausea hit me. At first, I tried to reason it away. Maybe they'd gotten mixed in the laundry somehow. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I confronted Daniel that evening, holding up the incriminating evidence. His face went pale, then hardened into something unreadable. He brushed me off with excuses so weak they barely made sense, claiming they belonged to a colleague who had accidentally dropped them in his gym bag. The absurdity of it all broke something inside me. That night, when he left the house without a word, I sat on the edge of our bed, shaking. My heart screamed for answers, for clarity. So, I turned to the only place that might hold the truth, his laptop. At first, there was nothing suspicious, no obvious messages, no strange emails. I almost gave up, but something pushed me to dig deeper. When I checked his messaging apps, one name kept appearing over and over again. Hannah. My sister. At first, I dismissed it. They'd known each other for years, she was family, after all. But when I opened their chat history, my world came crashing down. The screen was filled with intimate photos, affectionate words, and plans for a shared future. Daniel wasn't just cheating on me, he was cheating with my sister. I remember feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. My vision blurred. I dropped the laptop, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Betrayal doesn't even begin to describe what I felt. It was humiliation, grief, and fury, all tangled into something unbearable. I tried calling Daniel, but he didn't answer, so I called Hannah. When she picked up, her voice was calm, too calm. I asked her how she could do this to me, to her own sister. She sighed, almost annoyed, and said, "Amy, you're overreacting." Daniel was unhappy. I just gave him what he needed. Her words made my skin crawl. She spoke as if she'd done me some twisted favor. "You're always so busy being perfect," she continued. "Maybe this will finally make you focus on your kids instead of pretending your marriage is something it's not." I hung up before she could say another word. I was shaking, sick to my stomach. It felt like the ground had vanished beneath me. That night, I barely slept. I stayed up watching over my children, my mind racing. By morning, Daniel's side of the closet was empty. His clothes, his laptop, his things, all gone. He had packed up and left without a single word, leaving behind nothing but chaos. The next day, I drove to my mother's house. The moment she opened the door and saw my face, she knew something was terribly wrong. I told her everything, from the affair to Daniel's disappearance. When I mentioned Hannah's name, Mom went pale, her hands trembling as she covered her mouth. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "My own daughters." We sat in silence for a long time. I wanted to cry, to scream, but I didn't. I couldn't. I had 2 little lives depending on me now, and there was no room for collapse. That evening, as Mom held my youngest and told me to rest, I finally allowed myself to close my eyes. Exhaustion took over, but even in sleep, the pain didn't fade. I woke up to the same hollow ache in my chest, knowing that my life, as I knew it, was gone. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one I never asked for but would eventually learn to survive. I just dropped, completely drained. My mother's presence was my only lifeline, her quiet strength a balm amid the chaos. Her support brought a fragile sense of peace, a temporary shelter from the storm raging inside me. Numb from exhaustion and heartbreak, I finally managed to drift into sleep as she watched over my youngest, gently rocking him in her arms. But peace never lasted long in those days. My rest was abruptly cut short by the sound of my mother's voice, sharper than I'd ever heard it, cutting through the air. The faint cry of my baby mingled with her raised tone, pulling me from the fog of sleep. I stumbled toward the living room, heart pounding, only to find her ending a heated phone call, her face flushed with anger and disbelief. She didn't need to tell me who it was, I already knew. Hannah. From the look in her eyes, I could tell my mother had given my sister a piece of her mind, a small but satisfying act of justice I hadn't been strong enough to carry out myself. In the days that followed, Mom moved in with us permanently. Her presence made an unbearable situation at least survivable. She cooked, cleaned, helped with the children, and, most importantly, held me whenever the weight of everything became too much. There were nights I'd cry into her shoulder, whispering questions I knew had no answers. Why her? Why my own sister? Why now? When Hannah tried to call, my mother was the one who answered. Her tone was firm and final. "Don't contact Amy again, you've done enough." The silence that followed was deafening, but for once, it was the kind I needed. Hannah's number was blocked, her voice cut out from my world. It hurt, but it was necessary. Just as I was beginning to adjust to the quiet, I learned something that reopened every wound. One of my friends, unaware of the full story, messaged me, "Amy, did you see the photos? Daniel and Hannah, they got married?" My stomach dropped. Married. Just weeks after he'd walked out on us. It was like being hit by a tidal wave I hadn't seen coming. The betrayal that had once burned now settled into a cold, hollow ache. My friends rallied around me, cutting ties with the pair and showering me with support, but even their sympathy couldn't dull the sting. What broke me most was my mother's reaction. I had always known her as calm, diplomatic, soft-spoken, but when she found out about their marriage, something inside her snapped. I raised them to be decent, she said, her voice trembling with fury. But this is unforgivable. It was the first time I'd ever seen her cry out of anger, not grief. She vowed to stand by me, no matter what, even offering financial support until I could get back on my feet. Her love became the glue holding my shattered heart together. Still, there were moments that tested me, especially when my children asked questions I couldn't answer. "Where's Daddy?" my son would ask, eyes wide and innocent. "He's away for a while," I'd reply, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. A week later, a letter arrived. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. Daniel's. My hands trembled as I held it, but I couldn't bring myself to open it. I stared at it for hours, torn between curiosity and fury. Was it an apology, a plea for forgiveness, or just another manipulation? In the end, I decided I didn't need to know. Words meant nothing now, so I tossed it into the fireplace and watched it curl and blacken into ash. But that night, as I lay awake, doubt crept in. What if it wasn't what I thought? What if it was something important? The uncertainty lingered like smoke long after the letter was gone. The next day, my mother insisted we take the children to the fair, a little escape, she said. The laughter of children, the smell of popcorn, and the twinkling lights were a balm to my weary soul. Watching my kids' faces light up as they rode the carousel made me smile genuinely for the first time in months. For a few hours, I allowed myself to believe that we might be okay. That night, with the children asleep and a bottle of wine between us, I finally confessed to Mom about the letter. "I got something from Daniel," I began quietly. "Oh?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "What was it?" "A letter." I didn't open it. Her expression softened. "And why not?" "Because I've had enough lies to last a lifetime," I said bitterly. "I didn't need another one." She sighed. "What if it wasn't lies, Amy? What if it was something important, like legal papers?" I shrugged. It didn't look official, and honestly, even if it was, I wouldn't change my mind. She nodded slowly, taking a sip of her wine. "Maybe you're right, but sometimes closure comes from knowing what was said, even if it's ugly." I gave a faint smile. "Maybe, but I've had enough closure for one lifetime." We let the topic drop, though I could tell she still worried. The letter was gone, but its ghost lingered in my mind. Then, one morning, our fragile calm shattered again. Two men in black suits appeared at my door. My first thought was that they were debt collectors or from some government office, but when they introduced themselves as attorneys, my heart skipped a beat. They handed me an envelope and a check. My eyes widened when I saw the amount. $520,000. It didn't make sense. There had to be a mistake. "This must be wrong," I insisted. "I don't know anyone who would send me this." The older lawyer smiled gently. "It's no mistake, Mrs. Bennett. This is from Alexis, your mother-in-law." I froze. Alexis? Inside the envelope was a letter written in her elegant handwriting. The first line alone brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saving me from losing my son completely." She explained how she had come to visit Daniel a few days earlier but was turned away by him and Hannah, who had changed the locks. Suspicious and hurt, she pressed for the truth until Daniel confessed everything: the affair, the abandonment, and his rushed marriage. Heartbroken, Alexis had decided to rewrite her will, leaving her entire estate to me and the children. She wrote, "You are the only family who ever showed me kindness without condition. Daniel may be my son, but you have my respect, my love, and my blessing." By the time I finished reading, my vision was blurred with tears. The lawyers explained that Alexis had passed away just the day before, after a brief battle with cancer. Her final wish was that her grandchildren, and I, would never struggle again. That night, I cried harder than I had since Daniel left, but this time, they were tears of gratitude, grief mixed with relief. Alexis had always been kind to me, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. Her final act of love restored my faith that goodness could still exist in the ashes of betrayal. Days later, Daniel called. I knew he would. "What did you do?" he barked the moment I answered. I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "You burned my letter, didn't you? You were supposed to pretend everything was fine for my mother's visit. She changed her will because of you." I let out a bitter laugh. "So, that's what you're upset about? Not the affair, not abandoning your kids, money? You ruined everything," he hissed. "No, Daniel," I replied calmly. "You ruined everything when you walked out that door. Your mother saw you for who you truly are, and she chose to protect the people you left behind. There was a long silence before I ended the call. I didn't owe him another word. Soon after, I filed for divorce and fought for full custody. With the will in place, Daniel's attempts to contest it went nowhere. Even Hannah tried reaching out, claiming remorse and asking for a fresh start. I didn't respond. Some doors are better left closed forever. With Alexis's inheritance, I rebuilt our lives piece by piece. I secured a stable home, set up education funds for the kids, and helped my mom retire comfortably. I even began a new career, something that belonged entirely to me this time. There are still quiet moments when I feel the echo of everything that happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the disbelief, but they no longer define me. My children laugh more now, the house feels lighter, and when I look at my mother, sipping tea in the morning sun, I see peace. Alexis's final gift didn't just save us financially, it gave us the foundation to start anew. As I tuck my children into bed each night, I whisper the same words to myself: we survived, we're healing, and we're moving forward. Because in the end, that's exactly what Alexis wanted, for her legacy to be love, not loss.